Lesson 6: Nature-based solutions for rainwater management. This lesson will address nature-based solutions for a more efficient and sustainable management for the urban water cycle, seeking to understand what functions, benefits, and main types to increase soil permeability. At the end of this video lesson, we want everyone to be able to understand the urban water cycle and the differences in drainage management in an urban context, and know the main typologies and solutions to increase the permeability of urban soil. By addressing the theme of water, we seek to frame the role of the built for the permeability of cities, while they can be cooperative structures in an efficient management of the water cycle. We already talked about the urban ecosystem, but we want to stress that cities are become overcrowded, heavily waterproofed, and artificialized, with an increasingly accelerated growth perspective. It is expected that by 2050 there will be 1.6 billion more people living in cities, which represents another 1/5 of the world's population. This larger growth in the number of inhabitants in cities will cause greater pressure on systems, in particular in the management of a much needed and increasingly scarce resource, water. Water is often seen as always available and at a distance from a tap, and which you use for almost day-to-day activities. However, the water goes through several processes until it reaches our homes, and then as another process, long, time-consuming and costly to return it to the natural environment. And while we spend resources, money and energy on the treatment, storage and distribution of drinking water, and then spend more money and energy to collect, treat and return it to the environment, we forgot that in parallel runs another less complex and less expensive system that should deserve our attention: rainwater. We can assume that we are witnessing a complete exploitation of fresh water, the result of our linear consumption of drinking water, and which represents high levels with treatment. At the same time, we have a large disuse of rainwater that simply flows through the cities towards the natural environment, having an end like wastewater. It was expected that rainwater would be absorbed by the soil. At least, that is how it occurs in the natural environment. But the strong artificialization of our cities has turned them into waterproofing terrain, unable to manage rainwater except to function as a runoff channel. Cities have difficulty coping with high peaks in precipitation, which results in flooding events. In a climate change scenario, it is expected that these episodes of intense precipitation will become increasingly frequent, putting at risk the drainage infrastructure and also the entire city. In this slide, we can see the differences in runoff values as well as the different amounts and destinations of rainwater depending on type of soil. These figures show that cities must deal with 5 times to 6 times more water at the level of runoff than an area of natural soil, while seeping in 3 times water, reducing availability in the soil and aquifers. From this, we can conclude that the waterproofed urban soil between 40 and 80% of the territory, which is the case of most cities, presents evapotranspiration rates 5 to 10% less in more naturalized areas, with a clear impact on air temperature. Lower evapotranspiration values represent warmer temperatures than would be expected. The strong reduction in infiltration in waterproofing soils reduces the availability of water in the soil, either through the availability to the plants or for the recharge of aquifers. As consequences, we have artificialization of the water cycle, with degradation of ecosystems through the high quantity of poor quality water. We also have the reduction in freshwater availability, water scarcity through stormwater runoff into the sea or other non-potable received media. Greater effort in water management with higher costs and more complex and time-consuming process for the treatment and minimization of the impact on poor water quality. In this scenario, it becomes urgent and essential to change the paradigm of water management. Increasing soil permeability has contributed to a better quality of life, with increased water infiltration in the soil and greater availability of fresh water for soil irrigation and aquifer recharge. Reduction of runoff volumes with less risk of causing damage to infrastructure or equipment. Greater softening of the air temperature as a result of higher evapotranspiration values. The increase in soil permeability in cities should be achieved by transforming waterproofing into natural solutions, such as increasing the number and area of public gardens, naturalizing water lines, creating retention basins, installing rain gardens, and applying permeable pavements where possible. Renaturalized water lines is a process that seeks to clear the flow through existing water lines. The cleaning and renaturalization of riverbanks increases the infiltration and capture of water by the soil and roots, thus contributing to reduce the flows and enhance a better management of the available water. Water lines also function as channels for water retention and accumulation in periods of extreme precipitation, with the winding path of the water line contributing to delay runoff and thus preventing erosion of the river banks and damage to infrastructure or equipment. Public parks and gardens helps to increase the permeable area while enhancing leisure activities and improving the landscape. The park of the city of Porto is one of the biggest urban parks and has 4 large bodies of water that can constitute 4 retention basins independently, able to oversee large volumes of water and thus avoid flooding in one of the largest arterias of mobility of the city. Retention basins are structures that by their features allow the accumulation of water, creating true temporary lakes. In case of intense precipitation, these areas can receive and accumulate rainwater, avoiding flooding events and allowing drainage infrastructures to respond to the necessary flow. These structures should be strategically placed in places of high runoff, in order to avoid direct large volumes of water to more vulnerable or sensitive areas. In the Esprella Park was created a retention basin with capacity to retain 10,000 cubic meters of water and thus avoid the flooding of a subway tunnel that serves a large hospital of the region. Rain gardens work as small retention basins, usually placed on the line of runoff channels that play a role as buffer zones of water infiltration into the soil. They are usually installed in the vicinity of streets or near discharge or drainage zones. Permeable pavements, as name implies, are structures that seek to ensure some permeability. They can be composed of porous materials or constitute alveoli in the structure in order to ensure the passage of water. They are good options for pavements of sidewalks or streets, as they must maintain some traction for the circulation of vehicles. There are many other options and solutions based on nature for efficient and sustainable water management, but it cannot be stressed enough what water is a scarce and precious commodity and therefore must be well managed. Cities therefore have a duty to be sensitive to water, not only from the perspective of being permeable, but also to be aware of the value of water for resilient, sustainable and productive management. An efficient and sustainable management of the urban water cycle allows reduce the volume of surface runoff, remove fine sediments, nutrients, heavy metals, and other pollutants, contribute to the improvement of the urban landscape and offer a wide range of versatile and flexible solutions. Increases the efficiency of drainage systems, reduces damage and costs with drainage systems, and it reduces the risk of flooding and the degradation of the water quality. For more information related to the water management or to the project My Building is Green, do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you.
In collaboration with the LIFE program of the European Union.